Well, welcome to my second NickPod. Thank you for all the great reactions we had to the first one. It was really nice to hear from you, and I'm glad you enjoyed it so much. So, hey, we're doing it again. We're going to do it every month on the first of the month. I've got a great show lined up for you here. It's again got some antique footage. It's got a tribute. It's got some interesting comments and information from a variety of people. I think you're going to really enjoy it. By the way, if you haven't checked out our selection of seminars, we've just had one on Ken Brook, revisiting Ken Brook, that was a smash and really fun to do. And future ones coming up include Mentalism, Past, Present, and Future, and also one on magic and theater, getting it together. Got some great guests on these, people who are going to give a great deal of information. They take place usually on the first of the month or the last of the month, one or the other, just depending if there are holidays, whatever. But you can always check that out via our website, lewinenterprises.com, and all the information is there. Right now, let's get right on with the NickPod. Well, our blast from the past this month is one of my very favorite magicians and favorite people. And I think it would be fair to say also one of the most influential magicians that we have seen in our lifetime, Channing Pollock. I want to start off with a little tribute, then we got something kind of cool after that. Channing Pollock was born in 1926 in Sacramento. David Copperfield once described him as the James Bond of magic. Who would really want to argue with that? Meet Channing Pollock, magician, icon, actor, the man who pretty much invented dove magic as we see it today. Take a look and check out these moves. Channing's style, sophistication, and technical expertise made him friend, mentor, and teacher to some of the greatest people in magic. You can put Lance Burton and Johnny Thompson on that list. Channing learned his magic chops, like so many other great manipulators, at the Chavez School of Magic. He went on not just to perform magic, but to become a movie star. He starred in many, many movies, and his screen presence was amazing. He once even got to play the ultimate Birdman. I first met Channing back in the 70s, and we loved to talk about A Course in Miracles. He loved metaphysics and could talk for hours. We never did get to speak any magic, but just watching him was a lesson all its own. Now, I told you he was an actor, but look at the way he really acts this out. Have you ever seen anyone pick up a cage and make it look really like he picked it up? Not like this. Well, that was Channing Pollock. What an act. He really was truly amazing. One of the people I've most enjoyed meeting in magic was Channing. The first time we met was at the Magic Castle, and we never talked magic. Actually, we never did talk magic in all the years we knew each other. We're both metaphysics buffs, and that first night we met, we discovered that, and we ended up sitting out in the parking lot in a smoky van and spending about 5 hours talking about A Course in Miracles and various other metaphysical things. He was a tremendous person. I was there for the celebration of his life in Las Vegas after he passed on. I'll just tell one little story there. We were sitting there, everybody loved Channing, and it was a very sad, sad occasion. And Lance Burton was in charge of the broken wand ceremony, and he was pretty nearly in tears, as were a lot of people. And the mood was definitely getting quite quite downbeat in our feelings about it. And I was sitting about 2 seats away from Johnny Thompson, who, at just the moment where everything was starting to get pretty sentimental, he said in that great stage whisper that only Johnny could really handle in the same way. He said, "I think this is about the time when Channing would have said, 'Let's go outside to the parking lot and smoke a joint.'" And it lightened the mood. It cracked up everyone around, and it was just one of those quirky moments. So sad to think that neither of those wonderful, wonderful men and magicians are with us now. But talking about Channing reminded me, I've got a little bit of footage, part of an interview I did with Mike Caveney, and I'd been very intrigued, having seen that wonderful footage from Hollywood Palace of Channing Pollock performing the double saw-through with the mismade bodies at the end. And I'd always thought that he was the first person to do this. That's what I've been told. And of course, it was made famous by Doug Henning. But I'd seen that footage, and that was what I heard. But then I heard a separate claim, which surprised me, but didn't surprise me. So I want to share just a snippet of that interview. We actually did this in one of our seminars on Billy McComb, but it fits so perfectly here, I'd like to share it with you. And this is a wonderful magical historian and magician, Mike Caveney. Another thing I'd like to just ask you about this, and that is, I know you've got a book on soaring. Now, is the book released yet, or is that in the works?
I have spent the entire pandemic, and I mean every day, working on a book on the history of sawing a lady in half. Now, I've been writing it for the last year and a half, but it started literally 50 years ago, because 50 years ago, I was in college and I wrote a term paper on sawing a lady in half. And ever since then, I never stopped collecting information and stories and photographs and posters and information about this trick. So after 50 years of that, I decided, okay, it's finally time to really do this. So I've written this book. It's at the printer right now. I will have copies in August. It's enormous, 440 pages, 9 by 12 inches, 350 photographs. It is an astonishing story. And part of the story is Channing Pollock's double sawing in half.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you wanted to hear about?
That's exactly where I was going, Mike.
Well, I thought so. So here's what's amazing. So at the castle, whenever I'd see Billy, he would pick up the conversation, that we had started before. And of course, even back in those days, I was interested in sawing a lady in half. And I must have mentioned something about Channing Pollock, the sawing a lady in half, that I had seen as a kid. And Billy, as he always did, said, "Oh, yes, very good, dear boy. I invented that trick." And he could tell, I'm like, wait a minute, you invented the double sawing? And he could see I didn't believe him. So that was that. The next time I saw Billy, he says, "Oh, here we go, dear boy." And he took out of his coat a Xeroxed copy of Abracadabra magazine from 1962 with a full story. Billy McComb and his wife June appeared on the Denny Willis TV show. He had 2 sawing in half boxes. He cut June in half in one of them, and he cut a man in half in the other one, and he switched the bottom halves, and June came out with a pair of man's trousers, and the man came out with fishnet stockings. So he was right. He invented the double sawing. That's the only time he ever did it. It's a fantastic idea, so commercial. And he only did it once, but there it was on TV.
Please hang up and try again.
Well, here's a magician everybody knows. And this bit of footage came from my old 90s interview show. I had a TV show that was on Fox, so unlike me. And it was in Vegas, and it was various people. We had everybody from comedians, country singers, all kinds of people, but being a magician, there were obviously a few magicians there. This was shot in about, I would say, 96, maybe about 96, something like that. And it is with Jeff McBride. I used to really enjoy going and seeing Jeff performing at the old Caesar's Magic Empire. What a show. And one of the joys was to get together and talk with Jeff, who was really just at that point getting into full gear with his magic and mystery school. But he was on the show, and I was always intrigued by his masks. And we took a moment to talk about that on the show. I wanted to share that with you. Here is Jeff McBride from the Entertainment Files. And we want to talk now masks. I mean, that's the other thing. I think of you as a magician, but you're probably one of the foremost experts on masks.
I have one of the largest mask collections in the world, and it comes from my world travels because I tour a lot internationally because magic is an international language. And I started collecting masks as a kid. I was deathly afraid of the dark, like a lot of young kids. So I figured that if I couldn't beat them, I'd join them. So I started getting Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine and looking at all the Post comics. And I remember it was the day of my first Holy Communion. I used to go to Catholic school. And in the mail, I received my $7, was my life savings at that point, Post Wolfman mask. So I'm in full First Holy Communion attire with a little suit and the little flowers and the special little saint medallion, and I have this over-the-head Wolfman mask on, and I'm running around the schoolyard, and the nuns kind of freaked out, and I said, I have something here.
You got it.
I have something here. I have a hook.
Now,
this is my edge.
Were you doing magic at that point?
No, I wasn't doing
masks
magic.
came first.
First was the masks.
That's
what I would do is I
interesting.
would put on the masks, and I'd put on gloves with cardboard fingernails. And I grew up in upstate New York in the mountains, so what I would do, I didn't have any shows because I didn't do magic then, so my only shows were running around to the neighbors' windows and pounding on the windows and with my masks on and scaring them, and they'd wave, and there's Jeff. And
So you were kind of freaky.
Yeah, I was a freaky
I'm glad
kid.
I wasn't your
This
neighbor.
is good to know. I guessed as much. And Bob Dylan, one of my favorite people, very mask-oriented, on one of the great bootlegs on Halloween, he said, well, it's Halloween, I'm here, and I'm wearing my Bob Dylan mask.
Oh.
So is this the Jeff McBride mask?
Well, I think I have a lot of masks that I wear at different times, but I think we all do, you know. We wear a different mask when we're with our girlfriend than we do when a cop pulls us over on the side of the road for a parking violation. A little bit different mask goes on there.
Do we have misconceptions about what a mask is? I mean, does
it hide you, or what does a mask do?
I think, and
that's sort of what the public perception is.
That's
a
right.
mask reveals a lot more than it conceals. I feel people think they can hide behind masks, but I feel we have a lot of latent personalities, that we're a lot of different people, that we have this whole role of marionettes and puppets that come out at different times. You're a different guy when you have a suit on than when you have jeans and cowboy boots on, you know, and that becomes part of our social mask because our clothing is a social mask. You know how cool we feel when we put on those certain sunglasses and feel a little bit like a rebel without a clue or something, you know, or Halloween comes around, people dress up, they play fantasy time. New Year's Eve, people, you know, do the same thing.
Now Halloween, that's your holiday, right?
That's the Celtic New Year. That
was a big one for you. Did you just love Halloween?
Well, you know, every day is Halloween for me because of with the masks, and I think that's a great day for living out your fantasy. You know, people work all year sometimes on their...
And they let loose.
Yeah.
Well, traveling around the world, are you picking up masks right from the mask makers? Do you go to a country?
Go to the villages. I'm getting ready to go again to
Really?
Bali, and they have mask-making villages there. In Italy, they have mask-making... Everywhere around, there's...
Do you have a favorite country or culture to pick up
I
masks?
like the Italian leather Commedia dell'arte masks. Those are some of my favorites.
No, we're looking blankly. What the heck is that?
Okay, those are the half masks.
That's right. I had to
Commedia
throw that.
dell'arte. Everybody knows what Commedia dell'arte. Basically, Commedia dell'arte is Gilligan's Island great-great-grandfather. Basically, you have all these different characters. In the Commedia dell'arte, you have Doctore, who's like the professor, who's, you know, and you have Pantalone, who's the old miser, which would be the Thurston Howell. You have Pierrot or Harlequino, which would be Gilligan. Capitano, which would be the skipper. But back during the Renaissance, these classic leather masks that are half masks so the actors can play. But they're archetypes, they're classic characters that are all over the world, and they're sculpted out of leather. Also, I like Japanese masks because I've been studying kabuki.
I was on the road a lot, but on this particular occasion, when the story is centered, I was in New Jersey, and I was working a club in New Jersey, and it was a beautiful club, kind of raucous, a late night show on a Saturday. You had to really have your wits about you doing magic to keep up with the crowd, but I always enjoyed playing there. And I don't know, it was New Jersey. You see the Sopranos now, and you think of, has a different kind of a light. But this club always made me just a tiny bit suspicious, because they used to have $40, $50 entrees for sale in the comedy club. Now, in comedy clubs, generally speaking, you would get chicken wings, or you'd get that kind of a food, but not $40, $50 meals. So I knew it was a little bit special. And that's how this story came to be. It was probably Wednesday night, and the owner of the club called me up and said, "Nick, you're doing a kids show on Saturday." I said, "What, a kids show?" "Oh, no, I don't do kids shows." He said, "You're doing it." I said, "Well, you know, I don't really have that kind of material. I'm used to doing adult comedy shows, and, you know, I think it'd be better to find someone else." And he said, "Nick, you're doing it." Okay, I realized I was doing it. He said, "Be ready at 2 in the afternoon on Saturday." So 2 in the afternoon on Saturday, I was ready to go. I put on my working outfit, I packed my working case, and I waited down in the lobby of the hotel I was staying in. And at about exactly 2 o'clock, suddenly somebody arrived through the front door. And they were a big guy, then suddenly another big guy. And they were tough-looking, big, muscular guys who were dressed to the T. And they said, "Are you the magician?" I said, "I am. My name's Nick." "Oh, great." One of them came over. I thought he was going to shake hands, but he really did. He kind of did one of these things. And I'm being patted down. And, you know, and we said, "Hey, well, come and join us. We got the car. He'll take your case." I said, "No, I'll take it." He said, "He'll take your case." So he went ahead with the case. We stayed inside just a few moments later. I don't know what happened. I think somebody took a look inside it, of course. But we were chatting, and I realized this wasn't your average kind of a birthday party. I was right. I went outside. There was the biggest car I've ever seen. It was gigantic. And then somebody opened the door. I got inside. My case was sitting on the seat next to me. And we headed out to an Italian restaurant. And that was a pretty interesting restaurant, because it was in the middle of a kind of an empty lot. There was just this little Italian restaurant in the center, nothing much around it, and on all four corners, pointing out diagonally, were 4 similar cars, and there were 2 guys standing by either one. And I went, "Oh my God!" I'd seen The Godfather, I'd seen movies like that, but really and truly, in all my years in show business and playing in Vegas since '76, I mean, I'd heard all these kind of, you know, mob stories. Didn't really totally believe them. I knew they happened, but didn't think it would happen to me. Suddenly I went, "Oh, you are in Godfather Part 4. So we went in. As we went in, I had my case. Somebody else met me at the door, kind of just patted me down. "Hey, nice to meet you." And we went in. I'm thinking, "Oh boy, I'm doing a kids show. This is going to be a weird one." And then I went in, and the whole room was filled. It was dark, and there was a head table, and seated at it were about 8 gentlemen, and they all were dressed to the absolute nines. There was one person in the center who was obviously the head figure, and next to him was a young lady. She was probably about 45 years old. And I looked around. I said, "Well, there's no kids here." And the guy was, "Hey, That's the birthday girl right there. And he pointed at this 40-year-old who was sitting there not looking totally happy. And I realized, oh, okay, it's not your average blow up a balloon, pull a rabbit from a hat kind of a deal here. And yet she was very much being treated as if she were about 7 years old. And I went into the back of the restaurant. Somebody bought me a drink and brought it in, and I was just sitting there. I got my props set, and they said, "You'll be on in 10 minutes. Do about 20 minutes." So I'm going, okay, and I realized, well, okay, I've got the perfect material for this, and I'll just do 20 minutes from my evening show. So I went out, and there was just a little microphone in one corner, and I looked around, and it was like walking into a movie. It was this beautiful restaurant, all candlelit, and I'm performing to the head table and kind of directing it to the young lady there. And I did my show, and it went very well. You know, everyone was very polite, very nice. And at the end of my 20 minutes, I finished. I went back to pick up the other stuff I had in the kind of, well, it wasn't a green room, it was the back of the restaurant. So when I got my stuff together, the same person who brought me in came by and said, "You done good. You done really good. And we'll take you back now." So the same two guys took me out. Somebody slipped me $500. They just put it in my, "Hey, that's for your trouble." Took me out to the car and drove me back. And I sat back in the hotel afterwards thinking, wow, that was a scene out of a movie, definitely. And I'm glad I was one of the characters who made it through at the end. So that's a road story. That was the weirdest birthday party I ever got to perform. Well, I love magic books. You can probably tell every time you see me, there is a bookcase behind me. Actually, they stretch into 2 rooms, and I love to read about magic. And sometimes my idea of relaxation is just to read a good magic book, not worry about whether I'm going to perform the tricks, but just read through the effect, rehearse it in my mind, and watch the way that things happen in that trick, what makes them special and what makes them different. I love to work through card tricks as a totally mental exercise. But I recently got a book that I love so much I wanted to talk about it, and that is called Making Magic by Martin Lewis. Now, I think everybody in magic knows who Martin Lewis is. His father, Eric Lewis, was a great magician. As I was growing up in England, he was very famous. And Martin came out to the States just a few years ahead of me, and we've had almost parallel careers. I can't tell you how many times I've arrived somewhere and somebody has said, well, you're not Martin. I said, no, I'm Nick. Oh, so apparently, I don't know, Nick Lewin and Martin Lewis is too close for some people to actually be able to sort out in their mind. Martin has been a long-term friend, and I was just knocked out with his latest book. I know the phrase legacy book is a little bit of a cliche these days, but this one really is. It's 359 pages. It's got 269 illustrations and 60 tricks. And they're all good. I mean, every trick in this book is good. It's divided up into 38 close-up tricks. There's parlor tricks. There's close-up tricks. 60 tricks in all, and including some of his absolutely landmark effects. The sidewalk shuffle. He gives several versions of that. Cardiograph. Items that he markets. Items that are currently for sale on his site. He teaches you how to do them, why to do them, when to do them, and all the little things in between. And it's a book that gave me so much pleasure to read that I want to recommend it. I do not think you could make a better purchase. It's just about out at this point. It was going to be ready for Magic Live, and I think there's a special edition that's coming out, which is leather bound. I'm not sure the price on that, but I think the regular price is going to be $95, which is a bargain, because the book not only comes in its own self, but it has a little DVD disc with it, a data disc, that many of these effects are ones that you can construct. And they're not complex, but he gives you the templates, everything you need to know with them. So there is no filler in this book whatsoever, and I can really heartily recommend it to you. And if you love magic, you should add this to your library, because this is one of the best books on magic that I have read in many, many years. And I had the chance to talk to Martin a little bit about it, how the book came into being, why it is as it is, and let me share that little conversation we had with you now. That book did not happen overnight.
No, I've been promising to work on it for 30 or so years, but like you, I spent a lot of time on cruises, and it's a choice between sitting in a stuffy cabin pecking out magic tricks on a typewriter, on a computer, or pina coladas by the pool, So I never really, I started little bits here and there, but, and I collected them all in a big folder, but I never really did anything. Then COVID came along. So in 2020, the cruise business dropped out. I'm retired. Not that I particularly wanted to be, but I was. And so I just said, well, I'll write the book now. Why not? I'm at home.
So you started in 2020 physically getting into it.
Yeah. And I thought that the writing part would be the hard part. Turned out that was the easiest part of producing a book. I had no idea.
Well, what was the toughest part?
Putting the book together, learning how to use InDesign to do the layouts, getting people to edit, which Dustin Stinnett did, and he did a beautiful job. But I still had to keep saying, how is it going? Are you coming along with this? And people dragging their heels. I had an artist. I wanted to have illustrations. I didn't want photographs, because I think illustrations can be much more clearer. I had an artist who, there's over 300 drawings. He did about 20 or so and then crapped out. So I had to find another guy. Eventually, I found a guy in Indonesia who did fast and accurate work, and was just a joy to work with. And he saved my butt.
It's a class piece. I mean, I gotta say, I'm finally getting time to read books, and I just loved it. And I'm not handy. The best part for me was when you said all you really need is a steel ruler and a sharp X-Acto knife. I go, whoa, I can handle that. I can even do it if he throws in a Dremel, which I mostly use to remove the calluses from my toes, but I believe it could be used for other means too. When you first thought of doing the book, now what was your goal? Was to get the routines down? Was that primarily it, so that they were really attributed to you, and you didn't find somebody else publishing it?
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to put things down in detail. A lot of the tricks in there have been published before, but they've always been those very brief magic, instructions, just a few lines giving people the general idea. But I wanted people to see my timing, the details of my presentation, and why I do what I do. And so that's why that's pretty much the thrust of it.
Well, that's what I like, because the philosophy is woven into the routines. It's not unnaturally divided up. If you read carefully, you can see what's going on with each routine. Were there any of those items that you didn't think you were going to give up, but you in the end you added in?
Not really. There were a few things that I took out. That I just said this just isn't good enough for the book, so I just left it out. And there are other things that I left out. I'm not sure why.
Initially, are you just selling the deluxe set? Is is it April 22nd, or am I imagining that?
Let me bring you up to date here.
Okay.
Because at the very beginning, I talked about thinking that writing the book was the hard part. And then I talked about having to learn InDesign. What I didn't get to was dealing with the printers.
Ah.
I thought you send your PDF to the printer and it's the next week you got your books all stacked in your driveway. Well, no, it doesn't work like that. It was the hardest job I've ever had. I dealt with a crazy woman. I would email her and then 4 days later she would respond. And her responses were bizarre. What sort of end papers do you want? I want matching end papers. I want to match the cover. So the next 4 days later, well, if you want marbled end papers, it's going to cost quite a bit more. Who the hell has been talking about marbled end papers? Matching red end papers. Oh, okay, we can do this one or we can do that one. Which would you like? And it was horrible. And then I eventually get past this lady and I'll go to the next person who is the one that's going to make sure that it gets to the actual presses, to the engineers properly. So she needs, oh, this is not the right black, or this one has a color thing that shouldn't be there, or whatever. So eventually I get past all of that and they go, yes, mid-April is going to be our delivery. Then a couple of weeks later, due to supply chain issues, it now looks like May 6th.
Please hang up and try again.
Well, now to a little segment I like to call Shameless Plug, because we do have a company here. I've pretty much retired from performing, other than doing one-on-one Zoom coaching, which is a lot of fun, and lecturing and doing these kind of events. But I have quite a good selection of items for sale. If you haven't really gone to our website, do check it out. It's lewinenterprises.com. And all my signature pieces are there. And much as Martin has put all his various signature pieces out on the line in a book, I wanted to do it on video. I'm a video kind of a guy. And I think every one of the tricks that I've made a living with over the years, for over 50 years, 52 years, all my key tricks are on our product line. And I want to take time out just to promote my very favorite. This is a special edition of my linking finger ring routine. And it involves a book, a CD, a DVD. You get full performing rights for it for TV and live. And you also get a Zoom lesson thrown in when you've done all the other things, when you've looked at it in book form, when you've studied the videos a little bit, then I come and show you some of the ways that I've used it in sales meeting. It's been a wonderful trick for me. It's been my signature trick for many, many years. And I used it in corporate shows extensively, because I would talk about team building, and I would link up rings from the fingers of the R&D department, the sales department, the customers, and that was part of the sales pitch I had. Hey, let me just run the trailer.
I've seen a magician take these silver rings and link them together in midair. Then I won't waste time with that.
Well, that's it. That's the end of my second Nick Pod. There'll be another coming out on the 1st of next month, and each one has a slightly different focus, as you'll see. We'll have more of the same, and please let me know your opinions. You can, I'm going to put the email address on the bottom if you have ideas, requests, things you'd like me to do. In the first one, I taught a trick. This one, I did a review, and I'm just having a blast doing these. I'm so happy that they're being so well received. So thank you for viewing. Tell your friends about it. It's totally free. You can, as you probably know, you can either view this on my website or you can download it if you want to keep it. We're going to be having some Fred Capps footage and some stuff about Fred in the next issue that I think you'll really enjoy, and a lot of other surprises. So thank you very much indeed for joining us on NickPod 2.